I am very pleased to be here. Hard to believe this is my 15th appearance at an alumni leadership conference, and I have enjoyed and, more importantly, learned something at every one of them. But this morning we are celebrating having hit, as Ray has announced, the campaign goal, the revised campaign goal of $2 billion. And while I know there's lots of technicalities about what is and isn't the campaign, the fact is our alumni have been absolutely key to this, not only in terms of sheer dollars, but in participation. And I really want to emphasize what Tom said. Doesn't matter whether it's $100, $100 million, it's all important. And I'm very grateful for all of you who have participated in this campaign and will continue to support us both financially and through your efforts. We're very, very grateful. If you look back over the period of this campaign, when we started it, there was no Stata Center, there was no BC Brain and Cognitive Science Project, there was no Simmons Hall, there was no Sydney and Pacific, there was no Zessiger Center for Sports and Fitness. And by the way, I learned that just a couple of days ago, Barry Zessiger went to work out in the Zessiger Center, and her card was not valid, and she couldn't get in. But we're sticklers on policy around here. 20% of the endowed professorships, which are enormously important to us, did not exist. While we are short of our ambitions, and as Ray pointed out, our undergraduate financial coffers were not nearly as strong as they are today, and our graduate fellowship support was close to non-existent. There was no open courseware. There was no McGovern Institute for Brain Research. There was no Picower Center for Learning and Memory. There was no Broad Institute for Genomic Medicine. The Darbeloff Fund for Excellence in Education at MIT did not exist. There was no Microsoft iCampus project. There was no Singapore MIT Alliance. All of these things and many, many, many others are results of the work that all of you did under Ray's leadership during this campaign, and we are very grateful. There is one really important metric, and I'm going to embarrass myself because I'm only going to give it to you qualitatively, but Barbara and I have taken for the last couple of years the goal of our campaign, now accomplished, $2 billion, and divided that by the number of living alumni of this institution. And I want to tell you, we are off the charts. We are about a little north of 2.5 times that dollar per living alumni than one other major university in Cambridge, Massachusetts. You should be very proud of that. Now, because this is MIT, I want to be very clear, that does not imply that alumni gave every one of those dollars, but they sure gave a huge chunk of them. And we're very grateful for that, and the increasing engagement, participation rates bodes well for the future as well. Well, I want to tell you something. Last year, I was here at this event, and blushingly, I'm going to say that every now and then you connect with an audience. You know, something is on, and you feel great about your talk, and they sort of have to beat on me to make me stop. And when I finished, Beth got up, and honest to gosh, she said, "Well, Chuck's finally got this down pat. He must be ready to leave." Now, I knew that I was going to be announcing in 3 months that I was leaving. She didn't. So it was not cause and effect, but it was the great insight that we have come to appreciate from our president, Beth Garvin. So this morning, in that context, my life has indeed changed a little bit. This time last year, Henry Jenkins was my next-door neighbor, and it took me 5 minutes to get from home here. And this morning, the only neighbor I know lives across the street, and that's Derek Bach, and it took me 17 minutes to walk here. So Becky and my life is beginning to change, and therefore I thought I would spend a little bit of time this morning sort of as a lame duck looking backward and a bit forward as well. I noticed over the last 14 years a good way to take the temperature of what was going on was that morning every September, during which Becky and I greeted the parents of our incoming freshman class, and a few of the freshmen who happened to be awake early in the morning. This is something that you have to experience to believe. We shake hands and smile and make comments and ask questions and give answers for 5.5 straight hours. And so when we talk about torture and standing in one place and so forth, I can relate to that. But I learn a lot. And I noticed that for almost literally 10 years, every third or fourth or fifth parent would come through and they would shake hands and they'd look at me and say, "You look too young to be the president of MIT." And then about 5 years ago, I noticed they stopped saying that. And so I worried a little bit about this, and the next thing I knew, I noticed that everywhere I got introduced, when I gave a speech, I'd be introduced as one of the longest-serving presidents in the United States. So all these things, it wasn't just you, Beth, it was these other things together, led me to be here as the outgoing president and one who is very pleased and excited with my successor, who most, if not all of you, had a chance to meet yesterday. It's been a wonderful life serving as president of this great institution, and as I've emphasized over this last almost a year now, it is a life, it is not a job, and I think Susan Huckfield is very, very aware of that. And it's not always exactly what it seems to the casual observer who views you as the visionary leader of the institution. And this particularly came home to me last June, when, thanks to Beth and the leadership of the association, I was given that greatest of all Boston honors and opportunities to conduct the Boston Pops and the Stars and Stripes Forever. A few of you were probably there. And I went out on the stage, frankly, up until the very last minute, trying to decide, well, am I going to go out there and be my usual stage self, or should I really get into this thing? And so I decided, look, this is only going to happen once in a lifetime, so just go ahead and make a fool out of myself. So I did, and had a ball doing it. But halfway through, I started thinking, you know, if I put this baton down on the podium and walk off the stage, the music isn't going to change a bit. That is a very accurate metaphor for being the president of a great institution like this. The outside people think you're sort of the conductor of this great symphony, but you're not. It's not that you're totally unimportant, but that's not what you are, because a great university like MIT, if you want to carry this music metaphor, it's not an orchestra with a conductor. It's a great jazz jam session where everybody brings their own ideas and their own instruments to the table, and somehow they get into the groove and they make marvelous music together. And that's what our great faculty and student body and alumni body, in fact, do. We have brilliant faculty and brilliant students, as you know, and you as alumni bring a great set of energy and ideas and enthusiasm that are a very important part of this mix as well. I've noted over these last months, as people are sort of generating a lot of fluff in print and electronic version and so forth and so on, saying very kind things about me and about Becky and talking about, quote, and I do put it in quotes, what you'll be remembered for. It struck me, and this is a serious point, it struck me that I could not have predicted any of those things when I came here. And I think the reason is that the achievements of an institution are not that of the president, they are that of the faculty and the students and the alumni body. But what has pulled all these things together, in my humble opinion, is that we've generally remained quite true to a set of abiding principles that help to define MIT. Among these, are our commitment to excellence in all that we do, our commitment to diversity in all the dimensions and sense of that term, something I felt particularly passionate about during this period, our commitment to openness in education and research. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And something that every university in this country can say to some extent, but I believe the magnitude of its impact here at MIT is extraordinary and indeed unique, and that is our sense of service to the nation and to the world. We don't just look inward and do things for ourselves. We have great ideas, solve great problems, educate great people, and try to use all of those mechanisms for influencing the world in positive ways. So I want to very quickly reflect on a few examples of each of these, our commitment to excellence. Everybody I know who has been around here longer than I, among our deans and faculty and so forth, will tell you that our faculty has never been better than it is today. And that could be symbolized almost any week of the year, but this week, as you know, the past week, the so-called MacArthur Genius Grant Awards were announced for the year. 4 of them went to MIT-related people, 2 to people currently teaching here. One, Angela Belcher. Angie is one of the world's great, or the wonderful Amy Smith, who is a lecturer in the Edgerton Center and who has devoted her career in a very selfless way to developing technologies to assist the quality of human life in the developing world, thereby not only doing good directly, but being an enormous mentor, enormously powerful mentor and role model to many students. Also, a young professor from the Harvard Medical School who is an HST graduate and a member of our Broad Institute won one of these, and an alumna from the class of 88 or 89 who is a professor at Stanford. So we have great people. Our students, as was said earlier, have never been better, either as measured by their academic brilliance or by their engagement with the world in so many, many ways. And I'm pleased to say that young people appear to be finding MIT more attractive than ever. This is kind of an inside metric, but in our business, if you will, the most important number you can ever look at is your yield rate, the percentage of students you admit who actually enroll and come to MIT. I want to tell you that our goal for many years was to hit 60%, and this year we exceeded 65%. There are only about 3 other institutions that are close to that. And so something good is happening out there, and everybody was just enormously pleased about that, except, of course, the people responsible for housing the students. That caused a little problem. But we got through that in good MIT fashion. Our commitment to diversity. This is such an important topic that I hesitate just to say a word or two about it. But despite the fact that we remain far from what we hope MIT will be someday, you saw the statistics that Linda put. Now, everybody's got a different time frame. If you're a student, your time frame is sort of 4 or 5 years. You hardly see the institution changing. If you're a faculty member, an alumni, it's kind of a lifetime. But those changes on any historical scale are astounding. And one thing we are proud of is that we've had a very steady growth in the number of women in our faculty during these last 14 years. And especially, we have begun to move and build momentum in that dimension in the School of Engineering, moving from 9% of our faculty to 14% in the last 5 years alone. And we will continue that. We will not shrink from the challenge. But the biggest challenge we have, as really does our entire society, is bringing members of underrepresented communities into our faculty. This is our biggest challenge, and our faculty itself this last year recommitted itself to that effort, and we're all going to work for the long haul to be sure that eventually we get to the kind of goals we want to think in terms of there. We're so proud of the diversity in every dimension of our student body. You walk down the halls and just look at the faces, and it's so full of energy and vitality. And if you live here day in, day out, you kind of begin to take this as natural. But I tell you, as I go around the country and visit a lot of other campuses, you don't walk away with that feeling. So that diversity from culture and national origin, geography and race and economic background and on, worldview, is a real driving force for the vitality of this institution. And of course, MIT faculty continue to do extraordinary things, teaching and researching even on the issue of diversity itself. Later this morning, you're going to hear a presentation by one of our great faculty members, Shigeru Miyagawa, about an exciting project on cultural identity. Openness. Openness in research and education. When the campaign was just getting ready to form, I went around the country and had 14 what we called consultation dinners with small groups of alumni in different cities around the U.S. to kind of try out what we thought the case statement should be, what we thought the needs of the institution were, and to learn how to communicate them well, but more importantly, to get people's idea of, as alumni, what they thought was important. And seriously, at every one of those dinners, the first question was, what is MIT going to do about the use of information technology, the World Wide Web, and the Internet, and so forth, in its education? And 14 times I had to give the answer, well, I really don't know. And that was about where we were, because we could have all said something blithe or follow the pack. But soon thereafter, our faculty answered that question in the guise of a group that was largely a faculty group, but also had other stakeholders, including representatives of the association. And today you will hear from one of the people who conceived and drove what MIT's real answer to this is, and that is MIT's Open Courseware project. And because Dick Yu is going to talk about this, I'll kind of skip by it really fast, except to say there's no single thing that I have personally been more passionately excited about in these 14 years than OCW. Its impact, as you will hear, is enormous. All you have to do is skim through a few of the 20,000 emails we received thanking us for doing this, look at where they came from, who they came from. It's a tremendous accomplishment on the part of our faculty, and I think you'll be very interested in what Dick has to say in a few minutes. But there are other forms of openness that I'm deeply concerned about. You all know I'm always an optimist, but there are problems out there. This nation, understandably, has come into great tensions after the horrific attacks on our country in 9/11. And it's caused us to, in some ways, I believe, overreact in the policies and procedures we put in place for granting visas, for letting students and more complicated still, visitors to scientific and technical meetings and so forth in and out of our country, crossing our borders. It's caused some real deep problems that are rather esoteric. We could talk about a little bit offline in the area of export control, where any student born in other countries who comes and does research, and in that research comes in contact with equipment or processes that somebody in Washington may dream has something to do with building terrorist weapons in other nations, becomes a so-called deemed export, and we have to apply for an export license for that student to take the course or do the work. We're pushing back very hard on these things in partnership with our government because we know they're trying to do the right thing. But believe me, we are pushing back very hard to keep this kind of policy from snowballing in nonsensical ways. And if you ask yourself why, the answer is very simple. The openness of our nation, and especially our universities, for 2 centuries to people from other countries to come here to study, to become part of our faculty, of our industry base, of our entrepreneurship, of our entire civic undertaking, that openness is really what